Welcome back to Data with Direction. I'm excited for today's session because we're going behind the scenes of what it really takes to be a data pro in the startup world. I'm joined today by Kyle Stratis, founder of Stratus Data Labs, O'Reilly author, and all-around data innovator. We're going to dig into Kyle's journey from working inside fast-paced startups to building a couple of his own, and we're going to get the inside scoop on his new O'Reilly book, all about model context protocol and the future of AI agents, a huge topic for data engineers right now. So Kyle, for everybody out there that doesn't know a whole lot about you yet, tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure. Thanks for having me first, Chris. Really excited to be here. It's been a long time since I've done any sort of live stream or podcast or anything along those lines. So I'm Kyle Stratis. I've been a software engineer for 11 and a half or so years now. Self-taught. My background's actually in neuroscience. I left a neuroscience PhD program because I discovered that I like coding better than I like science, and also liked being able to make a living. That was also very important. Um,
Yeah.
so I fell into working in startups about 3 years or so into my career, and have been doing it ever since. I've founded a couple of my own, and now I am fully independent with Stratus Data Labs, doing consulting mostly for early stage startups, helping them do everything they need to do with their data, um, data modeling, building backends, building AI agents, building teams. Even I'm helping a client right now actually bootstrap a new product engineering team. So the experience I've gotten working in startups and wearing many hats is kind of transformed into this wide range of consulting, freelancing work that I do now.
That is that's super cool. I actually have one of my mentees has his PhD and was into just uh, on the academic side, and he was like, "This is not what I want to do with the rest of my life." Like he was like has like a chemical PhD, and he was like, "I want to do data." Like he really loved the just the analytics and all of the research that he did doing getting ready for his PhD, and he learned in that process that data was really what he loved. So that's awesome. That's the similar. I think a relatable story to some other people out there for sure.
Oh yeah, especially in the data science area. All the best kind of data scientists I've worked with have come from PhD programs in all the different sciences. Because for most of them, you need to have such a command of statistics, like even beyond what I had in my program, that they blow anyone out of the water. The coding stuff you can learn. The statistics stuff's a
Yeah.
lot harder to get an intuition for.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So I know that we had talked to a little bit before about some of the startups that you founded, and there was one really interesting story that's really cool that I think that really will resonate with some of the people out there about, and maybe a little bit of a cautionary tale too. Uh, do you mind telling everybody about that?
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite stories. So back before I actually started working in startups, I founded my first one with a group of friends. Uh, I say friends. We actually met and became friends through Reddit and through building this company. So there was a while where there was a subreddit called Meme Economy where people would act like they were Jim Cramer buying and selling memes as if they were stocks based on how popular they were. Like, oh, this one is going up. Like, you got to buy this meme now. Get in, right now on the ground floor and all this. And it was just like a silly thing that people did online. And so some of us got together on Discord and we're just like, why don't we actually make this? Like we're all young software engineers with, you know, maybe not a ton of free time, but enough free time to try to put this thing together. And so we started making this stock market game. One of us wasn't me. I wasn't the one that came up with the name, but they came up with the name Nasdaq and the Nasdaq of Dank memes. And so we were just hacking on this nonstop. I joined a startup accelerator that was local to me at the time in Tallahassee, and we just were building it. And my part was really doing kind of the business side of things as well as building our analysis engine. So the way we built the stock market was that we would listen to social media, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, all that, and get the fire hose. Back then, you could get a big chunk of the data that was going through live for free. Not so true anymore. And
Right.
we would analyze it for images, and then we would I built an algorithm to basically do a fuzzy match against the images we had in our database that we were tracking. And so when we got a hit, I had another algorithm, a pricing algorithm that would take into account the interactions, all the engagement for that meme, and for that single post for that meme, put it into one number and then aggregate that with all the other data we had on the meme. And the pricing function would decay over time, because obviously if you didn't decay it, it would just go up always, and that's not fun for a stock market game. And so I built that portion of it. The other devs built the front end and the traditional web dev stuff. And it was just like a blur. We built this huge community on Reddit that was really into it. We were profiled in like TechCrunch, The Verge, a whole bunch of tech publications online, even the local newspaper. I still have a copy of it, even though it's probably half decayed by now, because this was like 2017. And we got all this attention, and we were having a lot of fun building it. And I remember the day we wanted to deploy, because of the meme we did on 420, I was driving from Florida to Massachusetts. My grandfather had become very ill, and we were rushing up to see him, before he passed. And I'm driving down Interstate on 95, deploying from my phone, SSHing into our servers, deploying from my phone, driving, trying to get to see my grandfather, making sure this is going off, finding bugs like as more users are coming in. It was just pure insanity. It was a great distraction from everything else that was happening, and all that. But what happened was, it was very expensive to run. So I went around looking for funding. I didn't really trick my wife, but I somehow convinced her on our first anniversary for us to go to Orlando, because there was a pitch event there that the Startup Accelerator had a presence at. So I went with some of my buddies from the Startup Accelerator. They crashed on our couch in my grandmother's timeshare on my first wedding anniversary to do this pitch event. I made it for it. We made a whole week of it. We did like theme parks and dinners and stuff like that. But there was the night of the pitch event, and I'm up there talking about, these buying and selling memes, and a business case for it, which is social listening and brand management. And everyone else was like defense contractors, like doing amazing work, like cleaning up nuclear waste, or building guidance systems for missiles or something. And it's just like, you want to buy and sell memes as stock? Give me money, please. And so that didn't work out. So after that, I moved back up to the Massachusetts area to be closer to my remaining grandparents and my family that here. Started working at a startup. Some of the guys graduated college and started their careers and all that. And we couldn't really afford the time or the money to keep paying to keep the lights on. And then we got a cease and desist letter from Nasdaq for the name. And all still have copies of it. So out of that, so we had to change the name, and it just kind of couldn't afford to keep running it. So we shut it down. But we all remained friends after that. And that was kind of my favorite outcome from that, besides the cease and desist, is that I had this group of guys that we've been friends now for 8 years, because we built this together. And we recently, last year, one of our friends, one of the group, got married. All of us came in for the wedding. He was in Virginia. I came from Massachusetts. One guy came from the UK, another from Canada, another from Illinois, Indiana, Florida, and it was a nice reunion. A lot of us meeting for the first time in person. I brought my daughter. They got to meet her. It was really nice. And then we got a picture. My friend, on his wedding day, brought the framed cease and desist letter so that we could all get a picture in our suits with it. So that it was like,
that's the best cautionary tale for anybody right. Getting into a startup is watch the name.
The worst thing that really came of it was I had to deal with a really mean lawyer on the phone a lot, and that's it.
That's awesome. No, that is such a fantastic and just entertaining story, right? I mean, that's awesome. And I'll say that, like, like those types of situations, the people that you're working with in those like high pressure situations are really where some of like lifelong relationships are forged.
Oh
I mean, and it doesn't have to be a startup environment necessarily, but like just those high pressure, environments like that are amazing to really develop those relationships.
yeah,
Um,
you have that shared suffering, and you also see each other at each other's best and at each other's worst. It's like
mhm.
any any long term relationship, and when you have that common goal and you see each other kind of through those things, it makes a really strong bond. That's hard to break, and one that you don't want to break or kind of let wither on the vine either.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about. I know one of the things we wanted to get into was what is it like to be a data professional in a startup environment, and kind of we might go back and forth a little bit about what those differences are between, because my experience is primarily enterprise, and so we could talk about some of those variances there.
Yeah, for sure. I think even within startups, right? There's a variety of experiences you'll have based on startup size, maturity, the what they're actually doing. So for me, a lot of my startups were that I worked in were machine learning and especially computer vision focused. And so the way they kind of did the hiring is they bring on a team of researchers who are building the models, and they'd have to do the data cleanup and stuff themselves, but a lot of them come from academia. So production ready code wasn't always the focus, and nor should it be very early. Like, you're still trying to figure out your approach and find product market fit. And then I would come in either as the sole engineer, as kind of an adjunct to these research teams, or part of a small group of engineers, so 3 or 4 people at most, and kind of do handle everything in the machine learning development lifecycle, which is very similar to software development lifecycle, but there are like some very key differences and like different feedback loops that happen in that cycle. So you have things like you know collecting data, ingesting it, storing it somewhere that's accessible for the researchers, but then also accessible for things like your model evaluation. And then you have model training, model evaluation. That's a whole loop right there. You have the data annotation. So especially in like computer vision, you have to tag what each little thing is, and that's a whole discipline in and of itself. Um, then you have deployment, research. I'm sorry, release engineering and things like that. So a lot of times I was handling all of that pipeline besides like the model training. And even within like model training and evaluation, that loop, one of the things I did very often was automate that process. Uh, so that our researchers didn't have to change a bunch of code or do anything crazy to train a new model. They would just like push a button, send a job to the cloud, get a report back on how well it performed, and where it missed and all that sort of stuff. And so my experience my experiences are really about owning this long process pipeline end to end, and owning the products within it, training pipeline, evaluation pipeline, data annotation tools, the whole data platform for accessing the data. All that stuff was about owning that. So it's a lot of product management, project management, product ownership, along with the engineering, along with ops skills, because oh well, if you're building all this tooling infrastructure, you also have to deploy it and make sure people can use it. So you're also now doing cloud engineering, DevOps sort of stuff on top of it. And then we are also going to throw MLOps on top of that, because we need to know how the models are doing in production. So we need
Right.
to make sure how to observe, how that we have observability, we have logs, we have this and that. And so my experience is like wearing a million different hats, which I like. I have tech ADHD. I also have real ADHD, like biological ADHD. So it working in startups like really fit me very well, because before that, when I was working at more focused enterprise kind of companies, I get bored super easy. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of process. You're only working on one little piece of something, um, and so once I like squeezed out whatever learning I could, I would just get kind of bored and unhappy, and then I would want to move on. Which going to startups is great, because Sometimes you move on when you want to. Sometimes you're forced to move on because startups fail or they need to
Right.
resize and things like that. So, and I've worked at startups of all sizes. The last one I worked at before going independent, I was there for 4.5 years. I was the second full-time engineering hire behind the current CTO, first data person. Worked very closely with I think when I started, we had one researcher, so it was like a very close
Oh wow. Yeah.
collaboration. And building everything from scratch. When I joined, we had um, very little infrastructure set up, and there was a lot of 0 to 1, and then scaling. Um, and I joined just before they've closed their seed round, and by the time um, I was let go, that they had we had already closed a Series B like earlier in the year and all that. So like I was there for a lot of growth and then contraction afterwards. There were some like layoffs after that as well. Um,
Yeah.
so which is kind of the story of a lot of startups right now with interest rates going up, and then some policy things about the removal of research credits and things like that just made things I think really difficult for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was let go in October, I think, and took the opportunity to finally go off on my own and have been doing that ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think, in contrast, like my experience in, like I worked at AT&T for 15 years. And so big organization, and each, uh, there's a central like CDO, right? And then each organization within the corporation has their own data team, right? And so in some cases, in some orgs were big and we had multiple people. And like you said, we each worked on this little piece, and it was incredibly boring because you do your little piece, and sometimes you don't even ever get a chance to see what the whole thing looks like. Um, and then, but in probably 50% of my time there, I spent my time in smaller organizations, and I was like one of just a couple people. And so a lot of times in those situations, especially at the last org I was in before I left, um, I was wearing multiple hats, right? I was very much the DevOps person. I was very much the cloud infrastructure person and the data engineer. And then I had a couple of people that helped me with the BI stuff because uh, I'm not super creative, and so visually I needed help. So I had a couple of people that did that piece. But yeah, I mean, you often, I think, even in larger organizations, sometimes you fall into those situations where, like, I literally uh, procured a Azure account and license, and completely from scratch spun up our environment in Azure, uh, to migrate from AWS to Azure. And uh, so sometimes even in enterprise situations, you end up in an org in the enterprise where you're having to do all the things all at once.
Yeah, and I
uh,
think I think for some people, some personality types, that's a good thing, and for others, it's like, no, please, I want to focus on this one thing. And I don't think there's
yeah,
any right or wrong way to do it. It just really is like you need to find what matches you and your needs, which will change over time as well. The
yeah,
most, and for me, it's just like running around like a cracked out squirrel is kind of my my way of doing things. So um,
yeah,
that's definitely guaranteed in the startup. And the other thing I think too that's underrated about it is having to build and leverage your own community, friends, colleagues, people you meet just from like geeking out about stuff, and you know Joe Rice's Discord, or any other of these
mhm,
communities, because especially in a startup, it can be a lonely place. Like if you're the only data person, which like I was for several years on end, across several companies, you don't really have anyone to bounce ideas off of. You don't have anyone to check your work. It's really up to you, um, which is good. It's a pressure cooker. You learn a lot, all that sort of stuff, but you do need people to rely on to kind of get to that next level. So it kind of forces you, in order to be successful, I think, to build out that network or community, or I mean, I hate calling it a network. Like, to me, I make friends with people, and
Yeah.
like I help them when I can, and we have fun and talk about whatever random stuff that we geek out about. And and I've mentioned this before, but it's, to me, my philosophy with networking is really just like I'm making friends and all that. That's really it for me. And I
Yeah.
think that's super important because people want to help their friends, and you want to help your friends.
It, absolutely. And I've talked about this before, and with Ramona when she was on a little bit too. Had a LinkedIn. I had a LinkedIn post too recently about it. It's so important to kind of find your tribe, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I know personally for me, when I was younger, that was difficult because I was nerdy. I was not like super athletic and into sports. I was very much that computer geek, and um, and until you kind of move into a bigger pond, um, I think that sometimes it's hard to find that tribe.
Yeah.
But I think it's important, especially when it comes to like imposter syndrome type situations, right? Um, to have that tribe that can help to kind of mitigate some of that imposter syndrome
Yeah.
by sharing those stories about, man, I got stuck on this and I ended up missing a semicolon in one of my rows in my JavaScript, or whatever the case may be. And yeah, and to your point about Joe's Discord, want to show that too here real quick. But yeah, it's this practical data for the we mentioned it last week too in our session, but it's a great Discord, super active, really cool.
It's a great one, and yeah, I definitely, it resonates about having nerdy hobbies and things like that. I When I was much younger, I fell into computer programming and everything by it was a rainy summer day in Florida. I was like 11. I had my first computer, and Google wasn't around at the time. It was probably Alta Vista or something, searching for prank phone calls to listen to because I had nothing else to do. I was a skate rat. I skateboarded a lot growing up. So, and I lived
Nice.
in the middle of nowhere. We had one little neighborhood and just swampland all around us. So me and like the two other kids in the neighborhood just skateboarded all the time, and could skateboard because in the summer in Florida it rains every day, downpours, and then it's too wet and humid to like want to be outside. And so I searched for it. I found this group, the Phone Losers of America, and I started listening to prank calls. And I was like, "Oh, this is awesome!" It was like kind of a semi-satirical hacking phone freaking group. So I joined the forums and I started learning about phone freaking, red boxes, dumpster diving into telco dumpsters to get manuals, and I just like became obsessed with everything these people were doing, which is mostly highly illegal stuff. But
Mhm.
that's what got me into every nerdy thing I got into was from that first like tribe that I found. And I looked up to these guys that were, in their early 20s, and some ended up being really big names in computer security. Others were just, in and out of jail. So,
Yeah,
the two,
those are the two routes that you
yeah,
could take from there. Yeah.
exactly. Is if you get into computer security at any point, those are the routes. And but like I learned about ham radio and got my license because of them.
That's
All the
super cool.
like getting into sci-fi, they gave me like the canon of sci-fi just from hanging out in those forums. Like, you gotta read this, you gotta read the Illuminatus trilogy, which like blew my mind and affected kind of my whole trajectory growing up. Because if you read something that crazy at an impressionable age, it'll do things to you.
Yeah.
I've been reading 2600 magazine since I was 12, 13 years old. Um, and that's how I
That's
got into
awesome.
programming, because I wanted to make computers do things. And
Hmm.
so I've been coding off and on since I was a kid. um, and just kind of took this brief detour into neuroscience because I failed out of electrical engineering. So that's got into that, and yeah, started doing this. And real quick, wanted to get back to the point about sharing our failures.
Yeah.
It reminded me of a story before I worked at startups. My first true data engineering job, didn't have the data engineering title, didn't know what data engineering was when I started it. It was my second job in my career. I was working at homes.com, and I was working on their ETL pipeline that powered the whole website at the time. So one, like, I don't know, third, fourth week there, was doing some work and deployed it on a Friday. Or no, actually it was a weekday. It wasn't a Friday. It wasn't that
Okay.
bad.
Okay.
Okay. It was like a Wednesday or a Thursday at like 4:30, logged off, went home, come back, and I'm just getting like
Pinged left and right.
all
Yeah.
the all these jokes. I'm getting a hard time from everyone at the company. Turns out I managed to delete all of the images on our production database by something similar, something as stupid as not a miscolon, because at the time we were using Perl. But
Okay.
Perl is full of its own foot guns.
Yeah.
And it was something very simple and wiped out all of our images. And luckily it was all good natured jabs, and we all do this, but we had backups. Like, it was a competently run data organization. And it served kind of as a blueprint of how I've worked since, because it was so well run in a lot of aspects. And so it wasn't catastrophic, but there was like the tech lead and team lead had to spend like an extra hour um, bringing the replicas back up and finding the issue. So that was a really entertaining stand up, but like, it's something we all
Yeah.
do. And I think it's
It,
important to remember, like, we make mistakes, we break things, and the infrastructure should be set up to allow you to
be
bounce back
resilient
from
enough
that.
to,
Yes.
yeah.
And if you're like a junior and it's not, that's not your fault. Like, I see people like losing their mind. Like, there's no backup. I deleted all this, and by accident, and there's no backup, and I'm getting yelled at. And it's like, well, you're getting yelled at because it's
Because they
your
didn't build it
senior
right.
dev's fault. It's that's on people many levels above you.
Mhm.
But like, we all do it. So I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure I had at least one story of breaking everything.
No, and I think that's such a important lesson to learn, and such an important thing for other people to hear too, especially people just getting into the field. You know, and in one of my videos too, like, I open it by saying, if you haven't broken something in production, I don't think you're doing any work, right?
Yeah.
And because we've all done that with, like, at some point in our career, some of us maybe as early as in the last 6 weeks, right? It continues to happen, right? Something happens, something works in dev that you push it to prod, and it's just something had changed in prod that it didn't get pulled down into dev, and it breaks when you push. um and but such an important lesson to learn and to be resilient. And the great thing, I think, now, especially with data platforms that we didn't have 10, 15, 25 years ago, for sure, is time travel, right? um when we're looking at like the data, Delta Lake, and we're looking at like Snowflake and things, being able to have some of that resiliency kind of built into the platform to be able to time travel back and quickly and easily restore. But you're right. If you're a junior and you've broken something, and you've dropped a table in production, or accidentally did a truncate in production of some big fact table, if the organization can't quickly resolve that and be resilient and recover from that, it's not the junior's fault.
Yeah.
Like, it's the fault of the architect and the senior devs that they didn't build the system to be resilient. Because those things happen. Those things happen to senior people too. It's not something that's unique to being new to it.
No, not at all. And it's, we have to design these systems to kind of handle that. Um, and if we're not designing them, then that's an organizational failure. And the no blame culture is also really important, because
Yeah.
none of us are perfect. As much as we like to think we are, we're all going to make a mistake, and our users are going to break everything we make. That's the other thing. Our users
Yeah.
are usually chaos agents. Like, they're going to break something in a way that you've never thought of before. And that's why I've always really appreciated when I've had like separate QA people who are like brilliant at just breaking everything in ways you're like, how are you even able to do this? Like,
Yeah.
things are going to break, so your systems should be resilient from the get-go. Now, that's not to say you need to over engineer them, but you do need to have some fail safe, some backup, something
Yeah.
something there.
My favorite person in a business is that person that you know can break everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you could find that person in your organization that you know that every time they touch something, it breaks, like just mysteriously, like you need to find that person. That person needs to be your QA person. Uh, because I've been in so many situations where I didn't have a QA team too,
Yeah.
right?
Same.
And you just have to find some business users. With the agile methodology, when the agile methodology came out, that was the big meme, right? Is now we're using our customers to be our QA. Um, but yeah, finding that person in the org that can figure out ways to break something is really. I mean, I'm trying to be. I mean, I know I'm sounding like I'm being a little tongue in cheek here, but I'm being serious. It's a great person to find and utilize in your testing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I saw some of the comments about my mic being a little low. Is it sounding better now? Worse? Same? Anyone want to jump
anybody
in?
got feedback on that? I hear you. I hear that you're a little louder, so
Okay. Yeah. Want to
I
make sure
tried to
people.
lower mine too, so that we're at least kind of on the same level.
Yeah. It's always hard to
People aren't
tell.
being blasted out.
Right. Yeah. I have the fancy podcaster microphone. I still haven't figured out how to make it sound best. So, okay. Awesome.
Awesome. Exploring over. So we have a couple comments. Just want to aside from our mics being a little off here. Um, we got just this person's exploring Open Router. Uh, so super cool there, Nikhil. Nikhil is one of my recurring people that join our community members that join our podcast. He's been in here from the get go. So thank you for coming back.
It's awesome. Yeah, Open Router seems great. I haven't had the opportunity to play with it too much, but as far as like cost savings goes, that seems like the way to go. If you're open to using different models and depending, routing your requests based on pricing, Open Router seems like a really cool technology for leveraging that. It seems like it's becoming a standard. So I do need to play with it at some point. Usually in the contract work that I'm doing with AI agents and things like that, they um, the client usually has one model or model family they want to use. They have some kind of agreement that's already there for that, and they want to stick with one model regardless of what might be better for different situations. So
Very cool. So let's jump into a little bit of what led you to uh, working with O'Reilly and the MCP book that you wrote.
yeah, definitely. It's kind of a long path that took me here, but I think it's instructive for people who want to write and share their experiences, their knowledge with a wider audience. So I, as I said earlier, I'm self-taught for the most part. I took like an undergrad intro to CS class when I was in grad school because it was free and I was able to. And but largely self-taught. And so as part of that, I took notes. I still take notes on everything that I do. Um, it's really important to me to write everything down, my design decisions, why I did something, along with the documentation you do in the code or in readmes and things like that. But I have my personal documentation, a list of how I break down a project, like my choices, what I did day to day, tagged by the day, all that, like very detailed. And so I wanted a way early on in my career, so this is 2014, to access these notes more, if I'm away from my machine. And so that's that my way of doing that was starting a blog. And it was just like publishing kind of plain markdown notes to my blog. It was like a GitHub pages type thing. Um, and I kind of kept on maturing the system and I kept writing and writing. I don't know if anyone read my blog at that time. I doubt it. I think I was the only visitor. I didn't even keep metrics. It was just like, it's mostly just for me. But I wrote as if I was writing to people who didn't know anything, because if I went and looked back at something I did a week ago, I don't know what I did either. The context is lost. My memory is awful. So I had to write
Right.
for a person who didn't know anything looking at this, had no context, because when I was going to look at it, I would have no context. I would be that new person. And so I kept writing in this way. And after doing that for um, about 3.5, 4 years, when I moved to Boston and started working at a startup, I was starting to use Python professionally. Before that, it was C Sharp and then Perl. And I'd use Python on the side. I used Python for all my interviews. I was familiar with it, but I had to like ramp up my use of it and really get to the next level. So the what was I going to say? So in the process of that, Dan Bader, who had already written a lot about Python, announced that he was buying realpython.com. And he put out a call to subscribers, if you want to write, like send some writing samples. So I was like, why not? Writing is how I learn about things. I'll send him my writing samples, and I'll kind of, if I get this, I'll have another way of like getting better at Python, taking myself to the next level, because I'll pick up article ideas, learn something, and then write about it. And that's been my process since. So he took me on, I joined, and I worked with them for like 6 years until I just didn't have the time anymore to do it. I had like the most amazing editor anyone could possibly have. Her name's Joanna Jablonski. I want to give her a shout out. She's at another tech company these days doing I can't remember where she's at, but she's doing technical writing and training for a large company. And I think she might have been at HashiCorp for a while. But her guidance and her feedback, and just the process of going through like a real professional feedback loop for editors. We had like 3 stages of review. Made me so much of a better writer, more than Strunk and White ever did, more than more than all the academic writing that I did. That actually I think actively made me a worse writer. Just all the passive all the passive voice stuff is like, that's not what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a long time, and then I'd been approached by like Pact to do some books and stuff, and didn't really pursue that too far. And then a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was first approached by an acquisitions editor at O'Reilly, asking me to do a report. And so O'Reilly has these reports, and they're about like 30 to 40 page ebooks. They're usually sponsored by a vendor, but you're strongly encouraged to write generally. It's not, even though it's sponsored, it's not an advertisement for a vendor. And they don't want it. Nobody wants that, because it violates trust, right? So for the vendor, they just want to put their name, like, we sponsored this, and that's it. And so we talked about it, and I was like, okay, yeah, I've been reading O'Reilly books since I was probably 12 years old. That's always been my goal, to write for O'Reilly in some way. So I started doing that. I wrote a very basic what is generative AI, was my first O'Reilly report, and a very general like overview into what generative AI was, how it's used, some of the issues with it. Very basic, high level. The target audience was like business leaders and things like that. And then they loved it, worked really well. They approached me for another book, another report about deploying LLMs on Kubernetes. And I was like, well, I would love to do that, but I haven't really used Kubernetes very much. I haven't ever deployed an LLM to any sort of infrastructure. I've used them very widely, but I haven't deployed them. And so that was they're like, oh no, we have subject matter experts. What you're going to do is you're going to work with them. They'll write kind of the technical pieces, and then you'll put it together and make a cohesive narrative of it. So it's more of like a higher level type thing. So it's like, all right, great. The subject matter experts were awesome. They're from Red Hat. Really smart people, 2 very, very different voices. So you could very easily tell who wrote which chapter. And then there were some chapters that needed, excuse me, from my perspective as someone coming in as not a subject matter expert, there were things that needed to be filled in. So I ended up writing like a chapter or 3/4 of a chapter or something like that, and bringing their voices together. And I worked with another great editor, Jill Leonard, and worked with them. And it was a tough project, even though it was only 40 pages or so. But yeah, it was what came out was really really nice. Like I was very happy with it. It had a singular voice. Everyone's expertise came through, and it seemed like it was very helpful. So I have now the ear of this acquisitions editor. If I ever want to pitch anything, I pitched a few ideas, and then around January, I started thinking about writing about MCP. Sorry, quick sip there.
Yeah.
Oh, and I saw in the comments, my main blog, I published to Medium. My main blog is also at kylestratis.com. So very simple, very imaginative name. And then from there, I have links to all my external stuff, podcasts I've been on. I'll have a link to this video once it's up. I've made the disastrous decision of starting a newsletter potentially. So there's a link to that there if anyone wants to take a look at it. There's nothing there yet, but it's an aspirational newsletter right now. So anyways, I wanted to pitch this MCP book because I had been working, I do some consulting work via Tribe AI, and I was also working on their internal platform at the time. And they were actually the reason why I was able to kind of take the plunge and go full time with my consulting. And so I was working on this platform halftime for building agents, and we wanted to add support for MCP. And this was, I think I started it like late December, early January. So that entails building an MCP client. There at the time, especially, it's a little bit better now, but not quite. There are no resources on how to build an agent, or I'm sorry, how to build a client for MCP. They assume you're going to go through Cloud Desktop. You're going to build a server, and it's going to be attached to Cloud Desktop or to to Cursor or something like that, somewhere where the clients are built in, because Anthropic worked with these vendors to build clients and to help them build the first client so that people can use servers right away. We didn't have that. So I was digging through the source code, and it took a really long time, doing a ton of trial and error to make this client work. And it was like a very basic, not the best client you'll see, but it worked. It did its job, and it fit in the constraints that we had on our framework and platform. So I was like, I want to write about this. I think we could fill a book with this. So I wrote up a pitch. I outlined it. O'Reilly has like a pitch form. Basically, you write about your audience, what the goals of the book are, what a chapter outline might look like, all that sort of stuff. So you do all that planning very, very early on. And I talked to my editor about it. And I submitted. She's like, "Well, take a look at it. We're not sure. We're not publishing too many books this year." Just because economics and this and that, we'll see. So submit the pitch. We kind of went back and forth on it, and I think shortly after the final revised pitch was in, she was like, would you want to do a live course? And I was like, I don't really know. I don't know what my time schedule is going to be like. It's a lot of work, and it's not really how I like to communicate things. I'm very much a writer. Like that's just natural for me. And so I was in Greece at the time. I live in Greece during the spring. And then I think maybe a week or two after that, I get an email. Hey, are you still interested in writing the book? Apparently O'Reilly had a big conference. Tim O'Reilly was there. A bunch of people there. All anyone was talking about was MCP. So they're like, we want you to write this book now. But it has to be super fast. Like, this is going to be one of the fastest cadences for writing a book ever. And I was like, I'll do my best. I'm no guarantees there. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. I've been just like plugging away at it. It's an early release right now. You can see like a few pages on O'Reilly's learning platform if you are a subscriber. If you're not and you work for someone, that can be, if you have a learning budget, I highly recommend it. I've been an O'Reilly subscriber even before I was writing for them, just because you get free online access to their books, Manning's books, which is another one of my favorite tech publishers. and a whole load of other books, all for free. Like the library is huge, and it's very much worth like the $400 a year or something that it costs. Um, so yeah, it's an early release right now. About every month there will be updates. So I have finished out kind of the first full draft of chapter one with figures that will be in the next update. Chapter two will be, I'm trying to actually finish the draft this week. So wish me luck on that. And hopefully that will be in the next round of updates as well. Um, but the first chapter I wrote was chapter three, which is all about building clients, because that's the hardest part, I think.
Hardest part. That's awesome, and such an amazing story about, kind of pitching it, and I think another good lesson, especially for people uh, that may be thinking about going into consulting. Um, sometimes you pitch something and you don't hear anything for months, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, uh, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation, not hear anything for three, even as much as like 10 months.
Yeah.
And then it seems like out of the blue, they're like, all right, I'm ready.
Yep.
And it's super exciting and it's super cool, and they're ready to jump in. But like, you never know what conversation you have with a person, what thing you submit that's going to turn around and be kind of that moment for you, that
Yeah.
you get an opportunity uh, that otherwise you wouldn't have had. And I think that's true even if you're not going into consulting. Even if you're looking for a job, you never know what conversation you're going to have with somebody that's going to open a door for you later on.
Yeah, that's why my point of view, as much as it's possible, because like you do have a limited amount of time and things like that. But what I always try to do is just be helpful, expect nothing in return. Because in my experience, that always comes back to you, whether it's through that person or through someone else. Like it's seems like a law of the universe that in some
Yeah.
way it will come back to you. I've helped people that are thinking about switching their careers and trying to ask, like, what did you do? I've set up, I had, when my wife was giving birth, I had to come home because our water heater exploded, and
Oh, no.
our our cellar was just flooded with water. I had to work with our landlord to have someone come in, replace it so we could have hot showers. So I was taking an Uber back as my wife's like in active labor, and talking to the driver, and he's telling me, he's engineering background. He's here from I forget which country he was, but somewhere in West Africa. Um, not Nigeria. I have a couple Nigerian friends, but not from Nigeria. Somewhere in that region. So, anyways, he telling me a story, and we're talking and kind of getting to know each other. And so I gave him. I was like, I have this. I'm gonna write out kind of this guide of like how I switch my career. Here's my website. I'm gonna put it on here and like my notes, so you can look at it once it's up there. Give me your email address. I'll let you know when it's up there. And so I did it. And I put it up there, so if anyone asks, I can point them to this and say, "This is how I did it." Maybe it can be helpful. Maybe it's not. But here are a bunch of resources and things like that. And I haven't heard from him since. Like he told me he saw it and it was really helpful and very thankful, and that's perfectly fine. But that page has helped a bunch of other people who have in turn been able to help others through that, which is very rewarding in and of itself. But yeah, it's like those little conversations you have with people when you're rushing back to the hospital to try to make sure you're there for your first child's birth, or when you're just shooting the shit on Twitter or Blue Sky or Reddit, and coming up with ideas or just nerding out about something you like. um,
Yeah.
it's all those conversations matter, um, and they could turn into opportunities, or they don't. Like the relationship is itself a good thing to have, but
Yeah.
things do flow from that can help you in your career, personal life, whatever. And that's just relationships. People are social animals. As much as I tend to lean towards the introverted side, I do try to make a lot of effort to um, at least pretend to be extroverted, and to the extent that I can, just so that I can make those connections and it doesn't feel so lonely. Especially consulting can feel even more lonely than being the solo data person on a larger team. So
So Darcy asks, which animal did they give you?
So I actually love this. I need to check my email. I want to give the exact name for it. Let's chill. Okay, animal inside. The animal is called a cacomistle. CACOMISTLE. It is a small, I believe, South American marsupial. I think it's related to like raccoons and kinkajous. I'm looking at the Wikipedia now. Someone guessed it was a ringtail, which is extremely close. It's very closely related to the ringtail, but it's not the ringtail. But they did hide a little. If you're on the Wikipedia and you look at the scientific classification, if you look at the class, order, and family, there's a little Easter egg that whoever picked that animal kind of left in there for us. In that little sidebar for the scientific classification.
Oh, yeah.
The class, order, and family. The acrostic it makes. It's MCP.
Oh, MCP. Oh, that's too funny. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's an adorable animal. So it's my new favorite. I need to hunt down a stuffed animal for my daughter because she doesn't have 400 already.
Right. Yeah, my daughter's 10 and she has a whole day. Yeah, sometimes you can't see the floor for all the animals.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah.
Mine's 3.5, and she's decided she wants to sleep in bed with us now, and which is fine. Like, great, but I wake up with the cricks in my neck and in my back because I've been sleeping on a whale shark or something. Or have a snake wrapped around my face.
Yeah, because they don't come alone. They come with all of their animals that they have, all their babies. Oh yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. But yeah, no, this is super cool. Love the kind of animated. You're gonna have to pronounce that again because I will butcher it. But
I'm gonna go with cacomistle.
Cacomistle. I like it.
Yeah, it's I was like, what is that? Because usually caco is like usually it means bad, because it comes from the Greek word kakos. And this one does not. So I was like, oh, something bad about him, or maybe poop, because it's kind of the same root. But no, it's actually from so I think it's from an indigenous word actually. So it means something completely different.
Okay. Well, super cool. It's yeah. And you're right. It is super cute. Perfect for the book, especially with the whole MCP. That was it took me a minute, but that's awesome.
Big massive props to whoever at O'Reilly came up with that one.
Yeah, that's impressive. For those of you out there that are interested, be sure that you go out and check out Kyle's book. You could kind of sign up for. Go ahead and you could buy now. I think that there's a button here to buy online. Oh, but it doesn't work. Sorry.
It should be sometime. It's scheduled May 2026. Hopefully it'll be a little earlier than that.
Okay.
But yeah, it'll be out on all the major retailers. You get in paper. You can get the ebook, and you can also, if you subscribe to O'Reilly, you'll get, the free updates and everything, because we'll do. I'm sure at the rate that MCP is growing and improving, I definitely see there being updates coming as I'm writing it, and after it's released as well.
Yeah, and definitely some, you could get it as low as $49 a month, and the O'Reilly books are such a huge resource for anybody in tech or interested in learning more about technology at any of the programming fields. So awesome. So we've had a bunch of people come in and out. Darcy is our popular person today. Thank you so much, Darcy and Nikhil, for asking questions and being and engaging with us today. If anybody else that's out there has some other questions, be sure you put them down in the comments. Now is the time to ask as we kind of wrap things up. For those of you that want to connect with Kyle, I think probably probably LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best bet. Just Kyle Stratis. Stratus Data Labs is my business page. Um, I'm on here, and you can get to my personal website from there. But yeah, there, if you're in any of the discords I'm in, I'm usually in there as Kyle Stratis as well. And so you can always chat on Discord if you're there.
Very cool. And like we talked about earlier, I always like to plug uh, Joe's uh, Discord, Practical Data. I think, again, such a great community. I have to stop sharing and reshare, but such a great community, super active. One of the most active, uh, you know, Discord groups that I'm in, especially when it comes to like data stuff. It's really, really very impressive. And there's events, right? There are recurring events. I think it's on Fridays that we do the data
Data
therapy.
therapy. Yeah.
Yes, day Fridays at 7 p.m. is the data therapy session. So again, super cool, super active. If you want to be part of an amazing group of really very smart, very engaging, very friendly people, that's the place to go. And super funny too. I mean, if you haven't gotten a chance to go out there and talk to them.
I like that it's super diverse and like the types of data people. You have people that are more on the analytics side. You have people like me that kind of do more machine learning stuff. You kind of run the whole gamut there, which is really good to get a lot of different perspectives.
So we have Rotan here asking, let's go LM style questions. Describe, please, MCPs like I'm a 5-year-old.
Oh boy, I'll
I
do
think
my
that's
best.
a big question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So MCPs are really just a way to give a model tools at the most basic level. So it's a way for your application to talk to a provider, a server that can give your model superpowers, or give your application that's connected to the model superpowers. So if you want to make a true agent, something that kind of autonomously uses tools, you can load those tools from a server, and we're getting out of the 5-year-old range now to more a little more accurate type of thing.
Yeah.
So at its base level, MCP is a protocol. It's a way for two separate processes to talk to each other, and it provides through its software development kits and things like that the tools to actually implement that. So on one side you have the client. The really important thing to think about too is that this was inspired by language server protocol, which you're probably familiar with if you use any IDE. There are servers that provide information to the application, and that's really what it is. Your servers can provide prompts back to the agent, so it can use those prompts. It can provide tool definitions. So what will happen is you have the tool definitions loaded into the agent. The agent calls the LLM. You make an LLM call with those tool definitions as part of the context. The agent will decide if and which tools to use, and then it will have the server actually execute them, whether the server is running locally or running remotely. The actual execution happens from the server. So the server is just like a way to augment your agent or your application with things like tools or prompts, and the list of things that servers can provide to the agent or to the host application is growing all the time. So you have like sampling now where the server can actually call the LLM that your application is using directly if you want to support that. There's edicts and roots. Roots kind of define like where on the file system you can pull resources from. You also have resources, which you can act as a cache, which is a really brilliant use of them. I think probably the best use, and it can do things like reduce the cost of your context window, whatever context you're passing in, and things like that. So I think we're all still discovering what we can do with them and the best practices, including the team at Anthropic that's actually designing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it really exciting. We have there's a lot to explore there, and there's a lot of there. The downside is is a low barrier of entry, so there are
Mhm.
lower quality servers because people are kind of learning how to use it and all that sort of things. But I think as time goes on, we'll see like more and more official servers come up that adhere to best practices. We'll learn from all the mistakes we're doing right now and kind of get better together, which makes it really exciting.
Yeah, it's super cool to be kind of come in on the beginning stages of things as things start to grow, because so often those groups will also do a good job of kind of taking the feedback from the community
Yeah.
and actually hearing it, right, and making changes. Um, but
And
yeah,
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say
No,
there's a lot of opportunity to go from community to the group. Like right now, anyone, it's an open protocol. People can interact with the Anthropic team. They can push or they can, make PRs and they can make requests of the specification. There's a steering committee that, was when it was still being formed, people who were using it could be a part of. And so I think one like general thing I've learned over time is no matter what technology comes out, if you think it's overhyped or if you think it's underhyped or you're interested or not interested, get to know it a little bit, use it, do some toy projects with it, interact with any communities that are forming around it, and you can make a better informed decision of how much you want to be a part of that. And if you decide to be a part of it and it blows up, great. You have a great resource and a great skill. You have a community. If you decide not to and it blows up, well, it's okay. You can work on other things that you're more interested in. Like, we don't live to work, we work to live. And I think part of that is working on things you like and you find interesting. Or if you correctly predict that it's not going to go anywhere, you don't waste your time on it, but you at least know a little bit about it. You expanded your skills, you've learned a little bit more about how to learn things. Learning a skill is never a waste of time. It doesn't matter if you never use that skill. And that could just be me coping with not using my neuroscience education whatsoever. So we'll see.
right. And I also, so I think a couple things here, and we'll wrap up. I know it's 1:00. I apologize. But one thing is, if you jump into something, I think, and it ends up not going anywhere, like you said, it's never a waste of time. Learning is always good, whatever that's going to be.
Yeah.
But somebody had a use case for whatever that was.
Yeah.
You've learned how to get through that use case.
Yep.
Now, whether that be with that specific tool, or maybe you adapt a style or something that you learned from investigating it, is those are kind of the branches of different ways that you could go with it. But never a waste of time. So somebody at some point had a use case for whatever it was.
And even beyond that, like the more you learn things, the more you stretch your skills or stretch your knowledge or whatever, like the more you're using your brain, the better you get at learning. Like it's like working out or doing anything else. Like you use it or you lose it. So the more that you're actively learning and engaging with people, your network grows, your friend group grows, and the way your effectiveness at learning will grow too. I'm strong believer in that.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's really been a great conversation. I think that a lot of people get a lot out of what we talked about, and I hope to maybe have you on again, especially as we get closer to maybe your book launch.
Yeah, I would love it. It'd be a lot of fun.
So, love these sessions, and for those of you that are that join us every week, thank you all so much. Thank you, Darcy, for joining us today. Your new name for me, so I appreciate you jumping on, and super excited that you were very engaging. So thank you so much, and for everybody else that joined us, thank you, and I will see you again in about a week and a half.
Bye, everyone.